Hi guys, it's Quinn here. If you appreciate my content, consider hitting the like button. It's the best way to get the YouTube algorithm to notice this channel. If you want to do more to support this channel, consider checking out the Patreon link in the description. So recently, I did an unscripted video on chaos theory and Dune and Foundation, and it sparked a lot of interesting discussion. And as some of you know, I am working on my long history of science fiction video. It's going to be several hours long, and in the meantime I think I'm going to upload some unscripted videos just to discuss science fiction concepts. So as I said, a lot of interesting discussion cropped up as a result of that video, and I would like to talk more about some of that here. First off, I did get several comments that my video was ignoring a major character that shows up in the second Foundation book, Foundation and Empire. This character is the Mule. Now, I've done a video discussing the Mule before, many years ago, but the Mule is a character that has mentalic powers, and he kind of disrupts psychohistory. So those of you that were saying that my video kind of ignored the Mule, you're correct. That video did ignore the Mule. I was mostly discussing Dune and Asimov's Foundation through the context by which they are discussed and compared in Adam Roberts' book, The History of Science Fiction, where he's really focusing on the first foundational Foundation book and Dune 1. So it was a little bit unfair, I will say, for me to use context and material from later in the Dune series and not use context and material from later in the Foundation series to compare these two great works of science fiction. But it is absolutely true that yes, if we consider especially Foundation and Empire and the Mule's effect, that there is an element of chaos added to psychohistory. Now, that being said, since we are talking about comparisons, I think that the Mule is in a lot of ways similar to a character from Dune, and that character is Paul Atreides. And I think that Hari Seldon and his Foundation in some ways are similar to the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood from Dune, in the sense that it's all based on this big plan of Hari Seldon. And the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood in Dune is known for their plans within plans. Now, the way they go about planning is obviously very different from Hari Seldon's psychohistory. They don't really have such an exact way to predict humanity's future history. Instead, they use their knowledge of humanity's past as well as their manipulations to maneuver the universe in the direction that they see fit. But the thing is, in both stories, both Paul Atreides and the Mule act as these kind of singularities in the form of characters. They're the wild cards. They're the narrative mutation, so to speak. They are the chaos agent. They are the disruptors of the entire thing. But I think a key distinction here is the position of this disruption, narratively speaking, right? So in Dune, Paul Atreides' disruption of the Bene Gesserit centuries-long breeding program is not just a deviation from a long-running plan that was happening. It's the very axis around which the narrative turns. His unexpected rise to power is the fulfillment of a prophecy. They sought to control the universe but ultimately could not. His divergence is absolutely central to the intended arc of the story. By contrast, in Foundation, the Mule's emergence is not an integral part of Hari Seldon's psychohistorical plan, which is central and key to the narrative, but an outright anomaly. He's way more anomalous. He's an intrusion that fractures the deterministic course of history, whereas Paul embodies this culmination of a long gestating scheme, with the story being positioned around him and his deviation. The Mule represents like this unforeseen rupture in the otherwise structured predictive narrative. So while Paul Atreides is driving the story forward as an intended but misunderstood force, the Mule derails the story entirely. He forces a recalibration of the established order. So I do think it is fair to criticize Adam Roberts' take and to criticize what I said in my first video, because I don't think that Seldon's plan is completely rigid. It's not. It's designed to absorb minor deviations and to self-correct over time. So like even when the Mule appears, his disruption, doesn't completely shatter the system. It forces an adjustment. You have the second Foundation stepping in to restore order. So from this perspective, one could argue that that Foundation doesn't ignore chaos, but it rather treats it as an occasional outlier rather than an intrinsic force that shapes history, right? So the story ultimately, I think, reinforces the idea that with enough understanding, large-scale trends can be still managed even in the face of unforeseen disruption. But however, Dune presents a world where unpredictability is woven into the very fabric of reality. Paul Atreides isn't like this a statistical anomaly. He's a fundamental rejection of the idea that history can be controlled, and so is Leto II, and so is Duncan Idaho. His existence, defies the Bene Gesserit's careful breeding program. It's a perfect example of how small shifts, right? Like Jessica's choice, personal choice to have a son over a daughter can spiral into these massive uncontrollable consequences. So, and as we discussed in the previous video, even Paul's prescience doesn't grant him true control over the universe. It traps him on this inevitable path that, he ends up struggling against. So Frank Herbert constructs a universe that, in my opinion, is actively resisting determinism, showing that no amount of foresight can prevent the emergence of forces beyond prediction. So this aligns more with chaos theory, in my opinion. And as we talked about in the last video, chaos theory suggests that even the most sophisticated models will eventually break under the weight of unknown variables. So I will say, while Foundation does acknowledge unpredictability, in a sense, Dune fundamentally operates under chaos theory's principles, and I think that's why Adam Roberts says what he says in his book. So just to slightly reiterate here, the implications of each disruption, Paul, the Mule, are fundamentally different. So Paul's rise in Dune, it reinforces the novel's exploration of fate, its exploration of prophecy, and the illusion of control. His ascent is basically preordained and subversive at the same time. Like, it fulfills the Bene Gesserit's genetic vision, but also twists it beyond their grasp. So like the disruption of Paul Atreides aligns with the thematic core of the story, right? So the tension between the individual agency and the systematic inevitability. And the Mule, on the other hand, exists as an existential threat to, like I said, the deterministic philosophy that underpins Foundation, right? So his presence in Foundation and Empire causes a fundamental breakdown of the novel's central premise, that of psychohistory. The crazy thing about Dune is that Paul is disruption and fulfillment at the same time. He's disruption and fulfillment intertwined. So like when Paul diverges from the plan of the Bene Gesserit, that divergence almost feels like destiny itself unfolding. And then in Foundation, which is more of a study in historical determinism, the Mule's intervention is a rupture, right? And the narrative has to grapple with it. Alright, so that's all I had for today. Keep the discussion coming, guys. If you guys have anything to add to what I said, please comment down below. I like reading you guys' comments when they're thoughtful and engaging with the content that I discussed in the video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe for more Quinn's ideas.